Hey guys, welcome back to Athenas of History. I know it's been a few weeks, but I have some good content coming up, so be prepared. This week I'm going to be talking about Griswold versus Connecticut, a Supreme Court case that changed the idea of privacy and women's rights in the US for years to come. So let's get on with the video. Before I specifically focus on Griswold versus Connecticut, it's important to understand the history of birth control in the US. Before the 1960s, the idea of contraception in America and abroad were few and far between. The main form of contraception in the 19th to 20th century was simply abstinence, as things like birth control for women were extremely taboo in the first half of the 20th century. The belief behind the stigma came from the idea that birth control promoted immorality. Also, many people believed that contraception would affect their fertility for the future. There were also many religious beliefs that were against the idea of contraception. These beliefs encouraged legal restrictions on birth control. Beliefs were so ingrained in American culture that in 1873, the federal government passed the Comstock Act, which made the distribution and/or possession of birth control illegal, including contraception and abortion, stating that they were obscene and lewd. By 1960, 30 American states had similar legislation of their own. These laws, created to benefit society, began to hurt society rather than help people. In fact, with these state legislations, married couples were banned from using contraception within the safety of their own bedrooms. In the early 1900s, these laws began facing some opposition, most prominent of which came from American activist and founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. In 1916, Sanger opened a birth control clinic in Brooklyn and was sent to jail. But while taking her case to court, she effectively convinced the court to make contraception legal on the basis it would help women avoid illness. This was only the beginning of contraception becoming more prevalent in Western society. This is because while people like Sanger tried to educate people on contraception, birth control was advancing on the scientific front as well. In the 1950s, doctors and scientists began clinical trials with contraceptive pills. In 1954, the first successful trial was conducted, and in 1957, it was approved by the Food and Drug Administration to help with menstrual irregularities. By 1960, the pill was approved by the FDA. I want to note, for many of the clinical trials regarding the birth control pill, there were many ethical concerns, and many women were hurt in the process. I'll put more information on these women in the description of the video below. Despite the harm these clinical trials caused, they were vital to the advancement of birth control scientifically. Even with all this newfound information on birth control, socially and politically, birth control was highly looked down upon. People feared contraception, and laws banned access to birth control. All of these opinions and turmoil eventually led to the main topic of our video, Griswold versus Connecticut. In 1961, Estelle Griswold and Yale Dr. C. Lee Buxton worked at a Planned Parenthood clinic in New Haven. They were both providing counsel and distribution of birth control to married couples in the area. They also prescribed birth control to these couples. Soon enough, state law enforcement caught drift of this practice, and a little while later, both Griswold and Dr. Buxton were both put on trial on the basis of the strict laws of contraception in Connecticut during that time. The two of them were fined $100 each, but they felt that this was an injustice. Griswold and Buxton believed that married couples had the right to privacy when it came to the use of birth control. They believed in this so strongly, in fact, they took this case to court by appealing the charges they were facing. They thought the state laws banning the distribution and education of birth control were unconstitutional. They said these laws directly went against the 14th Amendment, which calls for equal protection of the laws. This means that every American citizen enjoys equal and legal rights, regardless of race, class, or creed. By the same token, the 14th Amendment also speaks on the right to privacy, and that the government should not interfere with people's personal lives. By restricting the distribution of birth control, Griswold and Buxton argued that the state was interfering with the personal lives of married couples that they were helping through the birth control clinic. The journey of this court case, however, was long and grueling, and it took a substantial amount of time before the Supreme Court even saw Griswold's appeal. At first, Griswold's appeal failed at the district level and was taken to the Connecticut Supreme Court, where the same thing happened. After these two consecutive defeats, the appeal was finally taken to the United States Supreme Court. At this time, Catherine Rohrabaugh, Griswold's lawyer, brought in the idea of the 9th Amendment in addition to the 14th Amendment, as the 9th Amendment said that there were unspoken rules within the Constitution, one of which was privacy. With this new argument into play, the decision of the Supreme Court was pretty much unanimous. 7 out of the 9 Supreme Court judges sided with Griswold and said that the birth control laws in Connecticut were unconstitutional, citing the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 9th, and most importantly, 14th Amendment. Although Griswold versus Connecticut is not as popular compared to other Supreme Court cases, the effects of this case are extremely prevalent in today's society. According to Planned Parenthood, in 1965, at the time of the Griswold decision, 32 women were dying for every 100,000 live births in America. Today, the rate is less than half that. Not to mention the significant decrease in the number of infant mortality during birth. This court case has changed the lives of so many women. Today we live in a world where birth control and contraception is mostly available and accessible. Women are able to access the birth control pill, which not only promotes bodily autonomy, but helps women deal with other health problems not relating to pregnancy like menstruation and endometriosis. Arguments made in the Griswold case regarding privacy helped to promote equality in so many areas of American life as well. This court case actually alleviated a lot of the social stigma surrounding birth control. It emphasized the fact that not all birth control users were promiscuous. As in this court case, the people who Griswold were helping were primarily married couples who just wanted more autonomy. This increased access to birth control also changed American culture in the following decades, most prominently seen in the counterculture movement in the late 60s and early 70s, where hookup culture was heavily promoted. This culture shift on opinions of sex would have been simply impossible without increased access to birth control. The impact of Griswold versus Connecticut is simply undeniable and has changed American society in both obvious and underlying ways. Culturally and politically, Griswold versus Connecticut helped not only the health of thousands upon millions of women, but also revolutionized bodily autonomy. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video about Griswold versus Connecticut. Like I said before, I know I haven't been posting, but I have a lot of things coming up, so I hope you'll stay tuned. Thanks for watching this episode and have a great day.